Hello and welcome to Velosio Viewpoint Live, where we talk all things cloud, digital transformation, ERP, CRM, IT security, and so much more to help you take your business from what is to what is possible. Now, before we jump into today's conversation, I want to make sure that whether you are on LinkedIn or YouTube, you go ahead and either follow or subscribe so that you are getting notified of any future lives that we are doing, as well as any of the content that we are putting out to help you throughout 2025 and beyond. So with that, my name is Jessica Rodriguez. I am the Marketing Performance Manager here at Velosio, and I have two guests with me today, Aaron Moon and Tom Gorbitt, who are going to be talking all about specific use cases for AI. So instead of us just having this one big, blanket kind of term that encompasses a lot, what it actually looks like in businesses today and what they have been seeing for our clients. So let's start with Aaron. Go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do here at Velosio.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. It's great to be back talking with you. So my role here at Velosio is I'm a consulting manager and over our apps and automation team. And our focus is coming alongside clients and working with them to help to transform their business processes, focusing on those pain points, those gaps where maybe the systems that you have in place today, aren't able to do what you want them to do. Maybe it takes a lot more human effort than you wish there would be in order to make it work the way you want it to work. So that's where we come in. And we're just excited about technology, using the new tools, figuring out what they mean and implementing them with our clients. So.
Awesome. Tom, how about you?
Sure. My name is Tom Gorbitt. I'm an AI developer here at Velosio. Work pretty closely with Aaron. So I'm a full stack developer, meaning I code. So I can code front end, back end, but also help out with point and click solutions like Copilot Studio. So primarily helping clients with putting together products specializing in AI.
Awesome. And today's conversation pretty much builds on one that we had previously. So on LinkedIn, YouTube, you can find Aaron and I talking about, some of the hesitancy that leaders have when it comes to really leaning into AI, whether we're talking about time, security, just different things that come up. So first, I want to encourage you to go ahead and watch that if you haven't already. And what we're going to do today is go ahead and build on that by talking about these use cases. And I want to kind of just dive right into it and start seeing, there are a lot of ways AI can be used right now, but what are some of the most common things that you are seeing or common business problems that you're seeing being solved by AI right now?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in and then let Tom go. I think the newest kind of tools and technologies that are coming out are all around language processing, image processing. I think that's where we're seeing, you can kind of see a lot of the new advancements. So things that are something a person might do, but might take a long time, like read a big email and try to summarize it for your boss, right? Or read through a document and identify key elements. And so I think that's one kind of big area that I'm seeing where we can try to help to increase the speed and the efficiency of our employees and the people that are having to do some of these kind of manual tasks of going through and reviewing documents, generating documents. There's that kind of productivity element that I think is a big component. I don't know, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Just expanding on that, I think there's different levels of AI as far as like the trajectory of where it goes, not only from like the industry standpoint, but from the point of how a company adopts it. And the first level, I think, is kind of using AI as an assistant. So like Aaron said, tests like summarization, a pretty common use case would be hooking it up to a knowledge base, whether that be a bunch of documentation, whether that be just PDFs of any sorts, any kind of what's called unstructured text, and then being able to ask questions on that information. Expanding on that, there's a lot of use cases around not only unstructured data like PDFs, but structured data like databases. So being able to talk to your data and ask a question and have AI transform that question into an actual query that can be run, returned, and then answered in human format.
And I think this may be a little bit of what you're both saying as far as some of the hesitancy is if we're going to adopt this, this is going to need to be a huge digital transformation, right? This is going to be a huge roadmap and a huge project. And I don't have the time, to commit for that right now. When you are going into these organizations, are the things you're mentioning kind of where you start them of, okay, let's start small with what are little ways we can almost like run this assistant before we get into some of the more complex pieces?
Yeah, I definitely think there's, we talked about that last time, this feeling of it's a big thing that it's hard to, you have to take a bite of the elephant, one bite at a time, right? And so, yeah, I think starting with personal productivity is a good place for someone who's just starting to explore, how can I use a tool like Copilot, to help me. And then I think if you kind of expand a little bit to more business problem, like, okay, we have a pain point here. Our team's doing this process every day, every week. Is there something we could do to make that a little bit better? And so I think it's taking those small steps, and then, the more and more the technology increases and gets better, the more those steps are going to become easier to take, and doing things like Tom's talking about, where you're, literally asking a question and it's going out and querying your systems and bringing back information. That's just getting easier and easier to do. And so in some ways it definitely could be a big endeavor, but I think it's becoming more accessible pretty quickly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There is different levels to everything. There's different levels to, I think, going after AI. There's something that requires full stack development and custom code solutions, which is something that I can do. But if you don't have all that support at your company, you might want to dip your toe into something like Copilot Studio, where it is like a point and click solution where you can play around with prompts and kind of learning how these large language models react and how to talk to them. And it's a very nuanced technology. So there's nuances, I think, that you can learn to how it actually talks to you and how it develops solutions, so that you can kind of dip your toe in the water and while learning about the actual products, which will inform you later on of how to best implement it.
Yes. And you have some of that experience under your belt to even mentally start to connect the dots of, oh, if I'm seeing this with this, that makes, sense up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm curious, what would you say is something like almost an under the radar use case that you're seeing people use AI for that's really helping their work, but most people maybe just aren't talking about it?
Tom, you got any ideas there? I'm trying to think about something.
I've got personal favorites. I can go into those. One thing that I always seem to come back to is so taking something that's subjective and then applying an objectivity to it, which I know is a very broad statement, so let me explain. Something like sentiment analysis. So taking text that you want to read the text and say like, oh, is this person happy or satisfied with the work they're doing on a project, something like that, and then turning into an objective score, and then doing this iteratively a lot so that you actually build up this objective data that you can analyze in a different way. Whereas you might traditionally have someone really get in tune with the different responses of something or just the text in general and be able to inform and make a analysis on something, being able to transform that data. I like to focus on like ways to think about AI instead of specific low-hanging fruit solutions. And one way I think about it is kind of like you're playing this video game. I'm a programmer, I'm nerdy, so I'm going to reference video games. You're playing this video game and you get to the end and you kind of like know all the rules and you know where you can and can't go. And then all of a sudden you're given this ability to fly. And that just changes the game. So that's kind of how I view AI is you have this whole new ability of how you can process things and approach things. So yeah, I hope that answers the question at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think too, I was just thinking about what's under the radar, or I think, I'm seeing it's maybe the obvious, maybe it's more obvious than under the radar. It's the fact that everybody's using Copilot or ChatGPT or one of these tools on day-to-day basis now, right? Like I talk to my team and, everybody's using that almost instead of Googling. And I don't know if maybe that's obvious, but I don't know if we're talking about the fact that like, maybe people aren't Googling, like we're going to say something else instead of Google it. Right. Or just the fact that if you do Google, the first thing you're presented now is an AI summary of the search, not even the search results themselves. Right. So there's those things that like people, if you're not paying attention, you may not even really think about the fact that like the world, it's changing, things are changing in a organizational work perspective. Having Copilot draft you an email, summarize the email thread, transcriptions in meetings. That's something that a couple of years ago we didn't have, and now suddenly we have it, right? We've got those transcribed meetings. We have people can click of a button, generate a summary of a meeting. So there's things like that maybe are obvious, but also if you like stop and look back, you're like, whoa, it's totally different now. Things are changing fast.
And something even as you were speaking, I started thinking on a personal level of just, so we're all using, AI in different ways, how much it has taught me to clarify, to get more detailed. It's almost teaching me some different levels of communication because I have to get so specific, right? You can't just be, you could be vague, but then it's all going to sound the same, right? Especially from a marketing perspective. So it like teaches me like, what do you really want? What are you really looking for? What emotion are you really, and just keep going down those layers, which really is starting to show in other areas. So it's kind of like a weird use case that it's working on me for.
I feel like I have that revelation on like a weekly basis. It's funny, the research that comes out on this, there's different like best practices that form honestly on like a daily basis because it's so new. But one thing is like if you're trying to compare things, if you're trying to compare like a group of like 7 things, whatever those things may be, it's helpful to compare like 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and make an analysis that way. And that's the same thing I do when I like try to choose something on a menu at a restaurant. So it's funny, these best practices that pop up are just general ways that humans interact, and you learn like, oh, also works with large language models.
Yep.
Stuff
Absolutely.
we do, we just don't think about it,
No.
Yeah.
And you have that moment, you're like, wait a minute.
Or it's almost like, how am I going to talk my kid through this? Like, which thing do you want? What do you want to order?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, you like this one? Why? You like this one? Why? Okay. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And, what do you think as far as maybe there's a couple of use cases, but like what is one use case that comes up that you think is going to become standard in businesses over the next 12 to 8 months? It's just so many people are adopting it. So many people are utilizing it. It's almost you're not going to have a choice but to start doing this because all your competition is doing this.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably lots of examples. I think the one Tom mentioned earlier, the kind of knowledge-based search, is something that's going to become really, really common, right? Being able to essentially ask a question, and there's kind of a set. When we say knowledge-based, that might be standard documents, if that's HR documents or process instead of a person having to say, let me check on that for you and go read the doc and get back to you. It's just to ask a question and it will pull it, I think that's going to be really, if it's not already, which I'm seeing a lot of customers doing similar things, then it's going to become extremely prevalent.
Yeah, I for sure agree with that one. I think the popular term right now is agents and things being agentic, and there's different definitions of this, but it's more so a large language model making an actual decision in a workflow and not necessarily acting as like a chatbot or searching a knowledge base. So I think that's largely being implemented now, where if you think about like breaking down like a workflow of something you do day to day into decision points, and those decision points are either like left brain or right brain. Left brain being like creative and right brain being like creative and left brain being very like 0-1. And the traditionally like those 0-1, if this, then that, that's what we could automate. And then right brain, it's like, oh, we need an analyst to analyze this document, or we need someone to review this and require approval. That's now something that is open to automation and can be configured. So a lot of those decision points that were traditionally more nuanced now can become part of the technology stack.
And for us here at Velosio, we are a Microsoft shop, which means we have a lot of clients that are using Dynamics, Microsoft 365 already within their organization. And what would you say are some of those AI tools or things that are available to them that most people miss until you're like, you could just do that right with it, that someone could benefit from hearing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Microsoft's Copilot chat kind of tool is obviously the first place I recommend people to start if you're just getting kind of introduced to this world. Most organizations are going to have some access to that. If it's just the kind of the open chat that anybody can use, or if it's the next level in, which is you're signed in with your work account and able to chat there and have some context to your work documents, right? So I think that's obviously the first place, starting to really digging into, can you use those Copilot features in Outlook, in your Word documents, in your PowerPoints? How can you really begin to make sure you're using all of those different little features, looking for that Copilot icon in everything, right? Because it's showing up everywhere. And then I think the interesting thing that some of the things that are going to become more apparent is what Tom's talking about with the idea of agents, and inside of that chat, being able to chat with an agent that can do something, perform an action, make a decision for you. I think that's going to become even more. It's starting to get embedded in where inside of Copilot you can go and add new agents into your chat, and that's really where we see a lot of interest right now, is in creating new agents unique to your business process, and that also applies inside of dynamics and your ERP, CRM kind of processes. How can we plug into those systems and enable that Copilot agent response to have context to your business process, right? To your opportunity you're working on, to your the financial data, the customers that you're following up on, if there's payments that you're requesting, or account balances, can you have all of that at your fingertips? So yeah, I think there's just lots of little nuanced things to watch out for that oftentimes I think are overlooked right now.
I'll answer with a more high level, maybe obvious one, but like I do enjoy using Copilot M365 as almost like an HR assistant. So like asking about things like PTO policy, or it is hooked up to Microsoft Graph, so it has access to my emails, Teams messages, so I can say like, oh, when was this API link mentioned, or who mentioned this upcoming meeting? So quickly being able to search through that information and just save those extra seconds, getting to a solution faster.
That's a good one, yeah.
It's all that time adds up. You have a couple seconds here, 10 minutes here, and that's what I'm always trying to look for in my own process of, okay, what can we eliminate? What can we cut out? What can we simplify, or just, make more efficient in the process? And then a little bit, right? You test it, see how you like it, tweak it, and just keep moving on from there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because I did ask Aaron this message or this question last week or 2 weeks ago. Tom, how would you say that Velosio's approach to AI and helping our clients with AI is different than other things out there?
I think we, more so than other people out there, try to understand the customer themselves and what their actual use case is, instead of just trying to push whatever product we can, really understanding what the right fit is. And obviously that applies anywhere, but especially in AI, because as you said at the start of the call, it's such a broad term. So there are a lot of technology solutions offered out there, even within the Microsoft environment. So really making that connection with the customer and putting their needs first, instead of just going with a standard template of anything.
Yeah. Essentially, like, here's all these things, have fun, like, do a lot of stuff, enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So that actually leads in perfect, because next week we're going to jump back on and we're going to be talking a little bit about, deciding between all of the different options out there. How do you start taking this path? How do you set it up for yourself? So if you're interested in that, stay subscribed or following on LinkedIn and YouTube, because we're going to continue the conversation in 2 weeks. So you'll get notified for that. So with that said, Aaron and Tom, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, for sharing all of your experience and your expertise with the audience. And we will be chatting soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.